We think about what goes on in the classroom, liberal arts classroom. There may not be any quite so obvious hazards, but to the extent that any professor takes students on field trips or sends them to internship sites, these considerations are relevant. I'm going to talk a little bit about the legal framework that we live in. It's the water we swim in, and many people are not really aware of what is meant when they hear that somebody's been sued for negligence. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Negligence generally has to do with an injury. If I am negligent and I cause someone an injury, I can potentially be held liable for that, and that means the payment of money damages, or in criminal negligence, it could mean criminal sanctions. But we're going to be talking about civil liability for the most part today. If I'm a plaintiff, if I'm suing somebody for negligence, I've got to allege and prove four things. One, that the person that I'm suing, the defendant, owed me a duty of care. And I'll expand on each of these elements in a minute. So the defendant owed me a duty of care. The defendant breached that duty, didn't live up to the duty of care. The breach was the actual and proximate nearest cause of my injury, how I got hurt. And as a result of my injury, caused by the breach of the duty of care by the defendant, I have suffered damages. I might have lost a limb, I might have lost a family member, my property might have been damaged. There are all kinds of things that can constitute damages, but generally when we talk about damages, we're talking about money damages that compensate for the loss that was caused by the injury. The first element is the duty of care, and every one of us has a duty of care that we owe essentially to everybody else, and that is to exercise sufficient care to refrain from engaging in conduct that reasonably foreseeably could cause injury to somebody else. If I'm standing in the middle of a desert and I have an explosive device on the end of a string and I'm swinging it around, or let's say it's something sharp and I'm on the end of a rope and I'm swinging it around over my head, if there's nobody around me, the only person who's likely to get hurt by that conduct is me. But if I'm standing in a room full of people and I'm swinging a rope that has something sharp on the end of it, there are lots of ways that could cause injury. And so I'm right off the bat, I'm failing to meet my duty of care. So, and in essence, I mean, the duty of care is one of the bedrocks of society. The notion that we all owe to one another this duty to refrain from conduct that might hurt somebody else. So one implication of that is that it requires us to think about the circumstances in which we find ourselves, and to say, you know, is there something I'm doing that could cause harm to somebody else? Are there things that I can do to reduce the likelihood that I'm going to cause harm to somebody else? Okay, now the duty of care applies to both acts and omissions. If I fail to do something and somebody gets hurt because of that failure, that can be just as negligent as some action I take that causes injury. We always want to look at the circumstances. What's the situation? The greater the danger, the greater the duty of care.